Thank you all for joining us this morning for this AI and You, utilizing today's tools. My name is Brad Sims. I'm an instructional designer for the Office of eLearning here on campus. Some of you may formerly know that as STAR, but we are the Office of eLearning now. Again, thank you all for joining us. I've been wanting to do this presentation for months now, and I've done smaller, I'm building on smaller versions. Just last week before last, I was lucky enough to go to the QM conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I took several different sessions there were about AI. AI is the big buzzword. You know that already. If you haven't been living under a rock, you already know that everybody is talking about AI, especially on college campuses, all across the country, all across the world. It's becoming a huge buzzword everywhere you look, including academia and business and art and you name it. So I want to kind of give you guys some tools and give you sort of start with what all of this stuff is, and give you sort of some base foundation for this, and then we'll go through and see some tools in action. And with the idea here, we're going to get more specific as we go down, and the idea is that we're going to have some good best practices and some methods of using AI. ChatGPT in particular is the one we're going to work on to help design and build content that's usable in your online courses. So I've got two people here in the room with me, and I think everybody else is online right now. My plan was to do this thing and say, hey, a show of hands. Who is using AI every day? Marlene's got her hand raised. Sharonda, do you use AI every day? Not every day? Well, I've got some news for you. I'm assuming that about half the people in our online are raising their hands.
One, I see two.
Two.
Three,
there we go.
four, maybe about 4 or 5.
Dr. Chris, nice to see you there, raising her hand. Yeah.
There we go. There we go. Thank y'all.
That Marlene's got it. It's a trick question because, and I'm going to click through these really quickly. What is this thing doing here? Okay. And one more. If you're in Google and you start typing and Google gives you all of these possible questions that you might already want, and it's got these things filled out. That's predictive search. That's based on AI. If you're in your iPhone or your smartphone and you start typing a text and it gives you those 3 little words that it thinks that you might want to quickly tap to use, that's AI word recommendation. All of those, whenever you're on a website for e-commerce or banking or service industry things, that little chat thing in the bottom that pops up and says, hi, I noticed that you might want to spend money here. Can I help you? That's a chat bot. That's AI. Your smartphone face recognition, AI. Duolingo. I would do a show of hands, but I'm going to trust that just about everybody uses Duolingo or something like it. Duolingo uses all kinds of AI algorithms to tailor the lesson for you. Of course, self-driving cars. Self-driving cars is a good little side note here. All of these that I've mentioned so far are pretty much built around what we would call what we think of as text-based. Maybe some voice in there, but it's largely text. Self-driving cars are another thing that AI can do with visuals. Lots of times, a lot of our devices, including our phone cameras for the smartphone face recognition, they have cameras in it that are looking around everything all the time. And no, I'm on this one.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Here, we'll try this one, maybe. Yeah, so our devices now can see, and they're using that visual input to run through AI algorithms to be able to tell what their environment is like. And of course, the last one, they're advertising algorithms. That is based on some AI where it takes the aggregate data of your browsing preferences and browsing histories and mushes it all together so that it can serve up advertising to you. You can question whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, and we're going to go into that. There is good and bad with all of this that we're going to keep in mind. So very briefly, and this is a super brief overview, but what is AI? AI is an attempt to mimic human intelligence through computing in particular. That means machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, and a whole lot more. This is, again, super basic definitions, right? There are some subterms in this. AI stands for, of course, artificial intelligence. That is a huge and loaded term. There are various subcategories of what all fits into AI, and it gets more specific and more specific. Artificial intelligence in general goes back decades, even back to maybe the 50s, sort of 50s and 60s. And it covers a big umbrella. It's a big umbrella that covers a whole lot of different topics. So artificial intelligence, AI is a really general term. There's something called generative AI that we're using more and more. And what that basically means in a nutshell is you put in data and it generates something based on that data that's more than it was before. It's not just a calculation like you putting in data into a calculator and getting what's 2 + 2. It's synthesizing data from multiple points into a usable answer, and it's generating something, whether it's a block of text, whether it's a string of code, whether it's an image. We're going to talk about image generators, text to image, and text to text generators. But this is generative AI is typically what things like ChatGPT, MidJourney, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, Claude, and the list goes on and on and on. The big names right now in text, on the text side, is ChatGPT. And that touches just about everything right now. And we're going to see that in a little bit. The other one on the image creation side, in my personal opinion, and opinions vary, but MidJourney is what I think is the most visually advanced of the visual generative AIs. And I'll show you examples of that at the end if we have time. Now, here's the other term, AGI, artificial general intelligence. This is bigger. This is way more specific and much larger. And artificial general intelligence is typically what we think of when we think of really futuristic stuff. So this is getting into the realm of data on Star Trek and or the computer on Star Trek. Any kind of thing that starts to go from mimicking human intelligence to being closer and closer and closer to an intelligence within itself. There's a lot of course, years and years and decades of science fiction about where this goes, but there's also just a lot of new science about this. Here's the thing, though, we're not quite there yet. If you want to get kind of reductionist about it, a lot of the stuff in generative AI, that step above what we're talking above the artificial general intelligence, is basically ChatGPT, for example, is basically a really, really robust Google search. You put in a prompt, a query, a question in the form of a prompt for ChatGPT, and you click go, and it goes to all of these different sources, finds out information that's related to that, and synthesizes it in a way that makes sense to you. That's what Google search has been doing for ages now. ChatGPT does that, but from a much, much wider set of data that it's trained on. And we'll talk about that in a moment too. But it's not really smart. It seems smart. It seems like you're chatting with someone or something that knows things, that has its own intelligence, and it's really not yet. So moving on, here's some common generative AI tools. And generative AI, GAI, is what we're going to talk about pretty much for the rest of the session here today. I can see you guys all now. There we go. Hi. Going down this list, the first set are these large language models, which are LLMs. Those are built on taking loads and loads and loads, just a phenomenal amount of text information that's all digital from multiple sources across the internet, across the World Wide Web, and learning from them and creating models about how the language in each piece of those text and data files work. Now, this is everything. This is books. This is song lyrics. This is computer code. This is statistical histories about everything from the stock market to scientific research papers on all throughout all of the sciences. It's getting close to taking the sum of human knowledge and analyzing how the words in this knowledge is put together. And it's mimicking, again, how we as humans address that data and how we speak it back out or write it back out. And it's gotten really phenomenally good at that. First example there is ChatGPT. That's what we're going to show examples of in a little bit. The next one is used to be Bing Chat until about 3 days ago. This is how fast all of this stuff moves. Turn this just a bit. Is that one? That's this one. There we go. Okay. Bing Chat is now, as of about 3 days ago, Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft is calling everything Copilot now. I don't know why. Copilot, backing up one step, ChatGPT, the current free version is 3.5. If you pay money for ChatGPT, you can get version 4. Version 3.5 is theoretically not connected right now to the live internet. It was trained on data back in 2022, I think. And then on a certain date in 2022, they unplugged it from the internet to let it research new stuff on the internet. Now it's still connected because we talk to it through the internet, but it's not training on new data from live internet anymore. So a curious little thing, it was unplugged from the internet before Queen Elizabeth passed away. So if you ask it who the monarch of England is right now, it will say Queen Elizabeth. That's ChatGPT 3.5. ChatGPT 4 is connected to the internet, so it will know who the current monarch is, for example, as well as a whole lot of other stuff. ChatGPT 4, you have to pay for, you subscribe to. Now, Microsoft Copilot is free, and it is a free way to use ChatGPT 4 because that's the model that it's working on. I don't understand the how and why of that, but that's just how it is. The next one is Google Bard. That's Google's attempt at the large language model. It's its own large language model that it's using. Claude is another one that's it's really fantastic. It's more for writing. It's much better at writing books, synthesizing things to look like original ideas and original content. And you can argue that it is original. It's just as original as we are if we put our large language models in our brain and sit down and start trying to synthesize what we know into a book or an essay or a story or whatever. It's very similar to that kind of process. There are other large language models out there, loads of them. I highly, strongly encourage you to play with these. Go take a look at them, dig around, see what's what. The next one is text to image. That's where you simply type in a text prompt that says, make me a photograph or a painting or a drawing or a logo illustration or whatever of this thing doing this thing in this way. And the sky is the limit for that for the most part. My preferred one of these is MidJourney. And again, we'll look at that later. Some of the other ones, Stable Diffusion, Adobe Firefly, DALL-E. There are more and more and more popping up every day. We're going to talk about the ethics of this in a minute, but I want you to remember Adobe Firefly. There are ethical concerns with all of this AI stuff, lots of different ones, and we will talk about that. But one of the ones with text to image is, where did they get the source material to teach these image AIs to create new images? And some of them, several of them, like MidJourney, and I believe Stable Diffusion, and I also believe DALL-E, if I'm not mistaken, just searched the internet. They searched a huge site called DeviantArt, which is not as dangerous as it sounds. And DeviantArt is famous for having quite a bit of user-made content, right? And particularly, it's known for fans of a particular movie or novel or series or anime or whatever. Those fans coming and doing their own version of it, right? And then they upload it and everybody talks about it and everybody likes it and they trade it back and forth. And it was very much a grassroots fan-based community. Well, when MidJourney started coming together, DeviantArt was one of the main sources that it pulled from, and there was a big cry that that MidJourney was stealing from those artists. I can't comment on the ethics of that. That's all still under debate right now, and that's outside the scope of this presentation. But be aware that that's a real thing. And the reason I'm bringing this up is Adobe Firefly is the only one of these, as far as I know, that from the very beginning, the plan was to only use open source materials that were available. And that is part of its gigantic pre-existing library of stock images and open source materials. So they made a conscious ethical decision very early on to keep it clean that way, basically, and not have any questions about copyright infringement. Again, I encourage you to research all of that if you're interested in it. It's a deep, deep, deep well. So moving on, machine learning is how this works, right? And I've mentioned this a little bit, but I do want to cover it just a little bit more. The way these things are built is, actually, I have already covered this. Machine learning is made by going out and teaching these algorithms based on training these algorithms is the word that they use, based on existing data that's already out there, existing images, existing books, existing computer code, existing web pages, existing conversations on Facebook, for example. These models, these large language models and these image generators have been trained on all of the pictures on the internet that are freely available, all of the conversations in Facebook that are freely available. That's how it learned to speak like a human. It's read books and books and books, and that's how it's learned to sound like it's writing a book. That's basically what goes into all of these AI models and that's the process of machine learning. And the reason that it works so well, and this is almost difficult for me at least to understand, the massive amount of data sources that went into these things to train them. And it's different from that Google search and simply being connected to the internet through a search portal, an indexing portal like Google, in that when you go and do a search on Google, it's going directly to things that it's already indexed to find specific pieces, but not the whole thing, right? So if you ask Google, how much would it cost to change to get new tires for my 2014 Subaru Forester? It will come back and it will either give you a whole bunch of prices where it went out and found these things, or it will give you where someone said, oh, that's about $800, right? Just guessing. Through machine learning, it can take much more specific and a much wider net and find specifics. And more importantly, it synthesizes all of those from multiple sources into one answer. Now, that answer may vary if you asked it the same question twice. It may put it in a different format. It may talk to you in a different way, which is a reason that you have to, I also recommend that if you're using these, make sure you ask it a second time in a different way, or create a new chat. I talk about this later in this, but trust what it's saying, but verify what it's saying. It's not 100% accurate, and it hallucinates. That's an actual term of art that they use in this, where these large language models will just make stuff up, and it sounds absolutely credible. You can say, give me the research data on, X, Y, and Z, and cite your sources. It is famous now for just making up sources. Do not trust that bit, and always go back and check your work. Amar, you have your hand raised. What's up?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, what you mentioned just now, because earlier you were saying that machine learning is feeded a lot of things all across, and it synthesizes and generates and gives you output. If that is the case, then why does it make up? So, because it shouldn't be making up if it's feeded something.
That's a fantastic question. I was going to touch on this, but I will go into it a little more because you raised that really good question. These large language models are designed to make humans happy. It wants to give you an answer. It wants to tell you the right answer. It wants to help you. It wants to make your job easier and make you more successful at your job. It's designed to output its response in a way that is pleasing for you and helpful for you. It just wants to be that helpful because that's by design. So when you ask it to cite its sources, it thinks, oh, he really needs these sources. This is what sources look like. I'll throw those in. And the reason it does that is because it's not going to the one direct source and saying, this is the information from that source. Google will do that in a Google search. If you say, show me an article, a scientific article, or a well-researched academic article about whatever subject, AI for that matter, and link to the source of that, Google will do that because it's going from your query directly to that page source. Now, as you all know, you can lie on a web page. You can put a fake source in a web page, and sometimes that happens. Wikipedia is pretty good at citing its own sources down below, but sometimes if no one's checking it, that source that it links to could be who knows what. Machine learning, though, and large language models do it differently from that. It's not going to one singular specific source like Google search does from a prompt. It's taking all of this and saying, I think all of this wealth of knowledge is what the human wants to hear. And I'm going to tell it to him this way. And that's where you get those, what we call hallucinations. Catherine, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. Maybe I'm getting into the weeds here, Brad, but you used the word want, which implies an emotion. And my argument would be that it doesn't want because it doesn't have emotion, but the code is written in such a
Yes.
way that
That's
it
a very good
appears
point.
to want to please us. So it seems as if it's really a coding issue more than some sort of emotional intent. Is that correct?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. It is coded in such a way that it seems as if it wants to help us. It's coded in such a way to be helpful to humans.
Okay, so if that's the case, are there any of these then that have code written such that it doesn't make stuff up? Like, where's the one that only
Not
because it seems
yet.
like making stuff up is a different kind of code.
Right.
And
That
it's
is
not searching from content, but it's generating based on, again, what's written in the code.
well, it's doing both, actually. It's generating content based on the wealth of knowledge out there, the thing that all of the stuff that it was trained on, and we can assume more or less that it has been trained on everything. We should assume that it's been trained on everything that's digitally connected to the internet. But the second part of that is that it is coded to give us that response in a way that's pleasing to humans and helpful to humans. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to make that mistake 500 times in this. I will keep referring to this as if it's a human with emotions because that's the way it feels. And it gets hard to separate that, honestly.
Well, and so then the question becomes, it's like almost like we need kind of fact checking
Oh yeah,
for this.
absolutely.
Because
And-
it's like you get the results and then you need to give it a command to go back and fact check this.
Well, again, not to get too far in the weeds, but I recommend you don't give it a command to fact check itself because this is what it will do. If here's a use example. You say, ChatGPT, what year was the Spanish Civil War? Or, oh no, this is a better one. This is an actual real world example that someone did at the conference. ChatGPT, what country in the world in 2000, in the year 2000, what country in the world produced the most rice? And the first time you hit that button, it will say China produced the most rice, and this is how much rice it produced in 2020, right? If you say, ChatGPT, are you sure? It will say, let me check that. Actually, India was the country that produced the most rice. And you say, well, so now you've got two different answers. So which one is right? Who knows? You have to go to Google to check to see the real answer and find the real source. Then you can ask it again, a third time. Okay, ChatGPT, you said, you've given me two answers now. Which one is the correct answer? And what it typically does is goes back to the first answer that was the correct answer, although it will also equivocate. And here's the other fun part about that. I recommend you do this little experiment. If you do this, it will respond to you in a way, in a voice that is, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I forgot that, or I didn't mean to say it that way. I meant to say it this way, because that's exactly what a human would do when they're caught fudging their data, right? So that's a super interesting point, and I do want to. I would love to talk about that, but I do want to move on. And I encourage you to look up AI. Hallucination, and also AI sycophancy. That is its desire to tell you what you want to hear.
Well, I'm sorry, what was the word? AI
sycophancy, being a sycophant. telling you what you want to hear. Those are two phenomena of AI right now. And it is exactly as you said, it's based on the way that it's coded. And again, I want to stress the separation between the way that it's coded and the set of data that it's coded to access. Those are two separate things. And again, I don't even know the answers to all that. That's
Okay.
outside the scope of
So
this.
just a quick follow-up question then. If you have the coding and the data set, do the different LLMs use different data sets?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
they
so
do.
so how, if you're thinking about, and if you need to, follow up with me privately about this, it's fine. But if you're thinking about like, okay, which of these to use, and you kind of play around with them, and you want to get the one, like, do they tell you what the data set is? I suspect they don't.
They do not. In
Okay.
fact, most of them, ChatGPT and MidJourney included, guard that pretty heftily. There
That's what
are
I
lawsuits
assumed.
right now from people who have written books. I just heard a thing on NPR yesterday about this. A guy wrote a book. It wasn't a very good book. It was a very formulaic, simple book that he was going to put on. It was a book about zombies. Something happened, and there was a brain-eating zombie. Not, in his words, it was not Nobel Prize for Literature material. So there was no reason in the world for this to be a famous book, but it happened to be on the internet. So this guy went to ChatGPT and asked it to tell him what it knew about his book based on the title. And it knew everything. It knew all the characters, it knew the plot line, it knew every little bit, and was a perfect synopsis of his book. And so now he's suing OpenAI, which is the parent company of ChatGPT, for accessing his copyrighted materials. And we'll see where that goes. I'm sorry that I'm looking over this way because that's where I see you guys, and this is where you guys are looking at me. But yeah, that's where this goes. We could have a whole day session of just this and other ethical issues with AI. So I'll reiterate this as we go through, strongly recommend again that you check your sources, check the veracity of it, and also ask yourself, if you're going to use these, where this fits in your ethics. Are you okay with the ethical questions that are currently not very well answered? And I struggle with this all the time. I go back and forth with this. And I'll leave it at that because I could do a confessional.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your going into the weeds a little bit about this.
That's all right. Laura, you've got your hand raised too.
Two quick things about what Catherine just brought up. Interestingly, some of these LLMs now can generate even better output if you make part of your command, your query, something along the lines of, this is a very important thing for my job.
Yes.
And this is how they're actually making us users believe that they're like human beings, because the more emotional input you give it, then the better output it gives you. It's still hallucinating and it's still not 100% reliable, but
right.
That's a very interesting thing. And the other thing I was going to say regarding sources is that even when you check if the sources that it uses in the output, the source might exist, but it may not be the content that has been used. I'm saying this because this was one of my plagiarism cases last semester, where a student used, I couldn't figure out which one, but it was clear that it was plagiarized because every single parenthetical citation referred to this one source that I went to, I read, and it had nothing to do with what was being said on the paper. So
I mean, I'm giggling here because it's fascinating, and it's also tragic and scary, and it's all of those things. And we don't have good answers for this yet. And on the one hand, a lot of the knee-jerk sky is falling reaction that we often hear, even here on campus, some of it's true. A lot of it's overblown. And then, but the other end of the spectrum of how this is the next new thing that's going to solve all of our problems, that's also not quite true. So we have to, we're in the middle of this right now, and it's an amazing, a remarkable time to be alive, as they say. Which brings us to our next slide. I heard this quote back in, I think, March, and it stopped me in my tracks because I was just getting in. March was kind of when all this stuff, February, March of this year was when this started becoming, when ChatGPT started becoming a household name. And I heard this quote in a YouTube video that I can't even find anymore. I also cannot find the original source of this quote. Doing a Google search, it says 10 different people are the source of this quote. And there's a second part of this. This is the worst that AI will ever be. And it's already pretty phenomenal. The power of what it can do, ethics aside, and I know we shouldn't just say ethics aside and wash our hands of it, but for experimental purposes, ethics aside, it's pretty phenomenal. The things that it can do, the power that it has, and the power that it can give to us if we use it in a smart way is pretty phenomenal too. And that goes even down specifically to powerful ways that we as educators, we as instructional designers, faculty, librarians, everybody else here on this call, these are really good, useful tools for us. And but again, we have to sort out where we stand on these things. So that leads us to, how do we use this stuff, right? Prompt engineering is what they call this. It is a new burgeoning field, and it is the way, the skill and the art and the craft of learning how to ask the machine to get you the answer that's useful to you. At a base level, you can just log into ChatGPT and say, for example, for course materials, you can say, ChatGPT, will you write 5 course learning objectives for my science class? And it'll spit out 5 course objectives, and it'll even give you all kinds of activities that align with those objectives, and it's pretty good at it, right? And then, but you could be more specific. ChatGPT, will you give me 5 learning objectives? And we're going to get into this in just a second. I'm going to show you examples. So let me move in. That's our first practical use case. And at this point, I'm going to jump over to ChatGPT, and we'll jump back to these in just a moment. And I've got a Word document here. Well, first, let me show you this document. I got this from the QM conference last week. And this has been, this isn't a set of AI prompts to create an online course from start to finish. Every single thing that you need to give you all of the scaffolding and the base content and the base blocks of words to go into building an online course. Most of you have built courses, I believe, built courses from scratch. This is pretty huge. Being able to streamline this in such a way that lets you plug in your specific information and your specific needs. And I'll scroll down to show you some of these. Here's an example prompt. And I want you to notice the wording of this. It starts as, you are an expert course creator. You're telling the machine, you're telling the AI what role you want it to pretend to be, right? How you want it to think about this data, right? And you can use anything. You're a rock and roll song writer. You're a fisherman looking for more fish, whatever. And it says your task is to develop a comprehensive course outline for the course titled, and you put your course in there. This course is aimed at, and you put your target audience in there, which is you want to make it specific to the grade that you're teaching, college freshmen, graduate level students in this degree plan or field. But being more specific with these things is better. The learning objectives for this course are learning objective 1, learning objective 2, and you just put yours in there, assuming that you already have these. And going back, I'm going to pause this thing right there and jump over to actual ChatGPT because I want to put in a prompt to actually do that. So I've created my own simple, very simple prompt that starts that same way. You are an expert course creator. Your task is to develop 5 comprehensive learning objectives for a course titled AI and You, Utilizing Today's Tools. This course is aimed at third-year junior undergraduate college students. The learning objectives should be based on Bloom's taxonomy, again, being specific about what you want it to do. Phrase the objectives to complete the sentence that at the end of this course, students will be able to this. All right. So now let's do it. Copying that, jumping to ChatGPT. This is the ChatGPT web interface. I come down here because I've got a new prompt ready to go and I paste that in. There's my prompt. I'm going to hit go. It knows me. So it says, hi, Brad. Hey, Brad. Sure thing. Here's your objectives. So it's got these. Remember, and then it says at the end of the course, students will be able to recall fundamental concepts and terminologies related to artificial intelligence, demonstrating a foundational understanding of AI principles. That's exactly what I want you guys to do, right? If you guys leave this session knowing that, we're good. I want you to understand, students will be able to interpret and explain the practical implications of AI tools in various domains, showcasing comprehension of how AI impacts daily life and professional environments. That might be a little bit outside the scope of this, but we're getting there, right? We're covering a little bit of that. And on and on. So I've got 5 of those. It created all 5 of those in what, 3 seconds? Less, maybe? You saw it. This looks like a magic trick I'm doing here, right? Now, here's what I want you to think about. So your dean, your chair assigned you a new course to teach this semester. Never taught this course before. Brand new course, never been taught. You sit down at your computer, you open up Blackboard, or you open up whatever, you start taking your design notes in for your courses. And you're looking at it and you go, okay, let's start with learning objectives. What do I want them to know? Every time that I sit down to do that kind of thing, it takes me forever to just get started. And I do that. I look at this all day, every day. This is my job, right? Getting those specific learning objectives, if you don't already have a framework that's from somewhere else, is a hard first step. What you should take away from this is this gives you that first quick and easy way to generate something for a framework, some scaffolding to put in there. And you can do 5, you can do 6, you can do 20, you can do whatever you need. If you already have course objectives from your curriculum or from your accrediting body, if that's where you get your objectives from, you can put those specific ones in and it will phrase them as it's phrased these here and fill the rest of those descriptions out for you in a fantastic way, just like this. So that's where to start. But I want to caution you that, and I'm sure you're already noticing this with just this example, you want to go in and now copy this into your Word document or your intro statement in your Blackboard course and fix this. It's not perfect straight out of the gate, but this gives you that initial scaffolding for how you want these things to be laid out in your course. So I think this is pretty all right. I could do this again and say, do this for 5th grade students. And it will give me a whole different set based on their knowledge level, where they should be with this. And then I could do it again and say, do it for 8th grade students, slightly higher. Do it for high school seniors, slightly higher. Do it for college freshmen, slightly higher. Do it for PhD candidates or PhD students. Hopefully it will be much, much more specific and much higher standards for these objectives. But again, if you do this, go back in, check them off, and make sure that they meet your level of objectives and expectations that you want in this. Laura.
Quick example of actually what you're saying that I think that despite all the ethics of all these tools, like as you say, beyond all of that, a great use of these tools, not just for us, but especially for our students, that I've seen in some of the webinars that I've attended about these AI tools is, for example, when you ask in a graduate course or an upper level course for a student to do, I don't know, a very complicated task. And sometimes we're not the best at explaining what we want them to do, or like because we are experts in the field, we understand what we're asking them to do, but to them it doesn't make the same sense. I've seen actually a graduate student showcase how she took part of a prompt from one of her classes, enter it to ChatGPT and say, like, can you explain this to me as if I were an upper level student in whatever the field was. And it basically rephrased the whole thing in such a way that she could understand it. So that's one of those ways in which I think these tools can be really powerful for us, even as faculty, because rather than us having to repeat ourselves, explaining the same thing to students over and over, I can always say, like, this is one way in which, rather than emailing me or having to make an appointment with me to ask something simple, you can use this tool in an ethical way and perhaps find out the answer before you even, contact me. I'm not lazy. I'm just trying to make the most of my time.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, I mean, the phrase, this is using these AI tools is just exemplifies that idea of work harder, work smarter, not harder. I mix those up. Here's another example that's very similar to what you mentioned. We write a lot of emails, right? We write a lot of emails that need to have a certain tone or need to convey a certain mood. For example, we might be mad and we might want to go rattle off a really fast email to somebody who we're not happy with. If you don't take anything else away from this, take this away. If you're ever in that situation, type out whatever you wanted to say, copy it, put it into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you make this a little nicer for me? And it will. It will put it into human language that's kind, that's professional. And you can specifically say, make my response a little kinder. Make my response a little more professional. I'm the employee and I'm sending this to my boss. Make it so that I won't get fired. You can put the specifics in for your needs in the situation. And exactly like you said, I need to send this very technical, big, broad idea in an email or as an assignment or whatever to students who are not as sophisticated as the way that I've written it. Or maybe you're pulling it from an upper level class and you're reusing that in a lower level class. Run it through ChatGPT, say, hey, make this for college freshmen. In fact, take it down 2 notches, make it for high school juniors, just so that you're able to get that language across. And it's super useful for that. I want to jump back to a point that you made, Laura, a minute ago. You said that that you could say my job, this is important to my job. I want to hone in on that. There's an article in Forbes magazine, and you guys can look this up or send me an email and I'll send you the link. An article from not long ago in Forbes magazine. Someone did a study of the different the types of response that you put in and the types of responses that ChatGPT and other LLMs give to those prompts. And it tried around with a lot of different things. It tried a real kind of strict voice, a commanding, bossy voice. It tried a really flat voice of like, give me this. It tried just a variety of those. And one of the other things that it tried within that set was at the end of it, it said something to the effect of, I trust that you will do your best on this job. The output is vital to my career. The output is vital. Your answer is vital to my career, or vital to my job, vital to this project. Vital, and what you're saying is this is vital to something that's important to me. They found out in that study that you get between a 6 and 10, I think, or 5 to 8, something like that, better response if you simply put that in at the end of your prompt. Now, there are some places where that's a bit overkill, right? It's already going to give me these totally usable scaffold for my course objectives. I don't really need to like put the pressure on it that I'm going to get fired if it doesn't answer me right. But that I think that speaks more to how this tool is built, which is what Catherine was saying. It's a tool built to want to please us, and that goes back to that sycophancy, right? It's fascinating and brilliant and scary, and something again that we need to be conscious of and think about in the ways that we use this. All right, so I'm going to keep moving. We're a little over halfway through, which is great. I'm glad we have a full hour and a half for this, because I would not have been able. We would basically be wrapping up right now. So I said this at the beginning. If you guys didn't hear this, if you came in late, thank you so much for joining me here today for this. I really hope that this is useful to you, and that we all get something out of it. And I hope that it demystifies some of this for you. So I'm going to jump back. And here's my slideshow again. We did course objectives. Now let's talk about rubrics. I will do the show of hands again. Who loves sitting down with a blank page and coming up with rubrics? I don't really know anybody who does. That's another one of those things. Margaret Strand raised her hand. Okay. That's another one of those things where you know what you need it to be. You know in your head how you want that thing to end up, but it's getting from the blank page and knowing to having it in your course. Now, I'm going to put out, I hope this is okay, Sharonda. As you may have heard, we have made the Ultra announcement, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's not public, but you're okay.
Okay.
We're in a safe space.
Okay, safe space here. In the next 2 years, our Blackboard version will be migrated to a new version called Ultra. This is a system-wide thing that the UA system is getting us to do. Ultra is tried and tested. It's great. It's a little different, but trust me on this. Don't panic. We're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. I promise. It is not the end of the world. So having said that, the new version of our Blackboard has AI tools already in it. You can generate images to use in your course that are AI generated and ethically sourced, from what I've been told. You can generate course outlines and course description, or I'm sorry, unit descriptions and things like that, just on the fly. You press a button, you say, generate me something, and you tell it kind of basically the field or the basic subject, or you paste in your short description, and it fills out a little block of text right there in Blackboard to help you do that. One of the other things, the AI things that it does, it's got an AI rubric tool. If you guys already use the rubric tool in Blackboard, you know that it's great and it does exactly what it's supposed to do, but it's also can be a little bit clunky. It takes a minute to figure out where all the bars all go. This new rubric tool goes in and you can do as much or as little specificity as you'd like with this, and you could tell it. You could basically type out your pre-existing rubric and tell it to put it into the right table, or you can say, "Hey, I've already got the materials in my course. You can see that in my course, Blackboard Ultra. Reference this assignment that I just said, that I just entered in, and build me out a rubric for it. And I want it to be a 4x4 or a 3x5 or a 6x8 columned thing. And you can get as specific as you want with all of that. You can say it has to cover this, and this, or you can just play roulette with it and say, make me a rubric. Here's the assignment, and it will do it. We're going to do that right now. That's not turned on yet in our current version of Blackboard. Just be aware that that's coming. And I've seen it work. It is a fascinating and powerful little tool that's going to save you a ton of time to get this to get things like rubrics generated. Let me jump back to, I'm already there, I need to escape. Let me jump back to my Word document. And I want to do a couple of these. Let me see. Yeah. I'm going to start with a really super simple one, right? My prompt is generate a rubric for a year 7 science experiment that assesses the learning outcome, quote, understanding the steps of the scientific method, all right? I'm gonna copy that. I'm gonna jump back over to my ChatGPT. I'm gonna create a new chat here on the far top left. Go in and paste my prompt in. Now you see that that's a simple 1-line prompt, right? Can you guys see that? Is it still, it's still covered up? Why is it
No,
covered up?
we can see it.
Okay, on my screen, it's looking weird. So you can see, can you see ChatGPT saying all of that right now?
Nope.
Okay.
You can only see your Word document. Now we can see ChatGPT. Yes.
Okay, let me quit that. Okay, there. Oh, so here's what it was. It was lagging. That's what it was. It was lagging. There we go. Okay, so I entered that in, and again, it says, "Hey, Brad." Side note: you can go into ChatGPT and set your preferences, and it will allow you to set quite a few preferences. You can tell it who you are. You can tell it what your job is. You can tell it where you're from. You can tell it all kinds of information about you. I recommended that if you do this, you make it relevant to your use cases, right? A funny example, and this will only take a second. I am both a hobby photographer in my other life outside of the university, and I'm also a game nerd. I played D&D since I was like in 11th or since I was 11 years old, not 11th grade, 11 years, you know, since I was a kid. So I'm that kind of nerd. I came in and I told when ChatGPT asked me to fill out my personal info, you know, like tell it who I was. I said, you know, I'm Brad Sims. I live in Little Rock, Arkansas. I am an instructional designer by day, and I take nature and landscape photography when on my free time. I'm a dad. I have a family. XYZ. This is a little bit of my background. And then I hit save, and ever since then, it comes in and it responds to me based on mostly my name like this, like, "Hey, Brad, sure thing." You can also tell it how you want it to voice to you. Do you want it to sound like a robot? Do you want it to sound like a friend hanging out at the cafe with you? Do you want it to, how do you want it to structure its verbal response to you, or textual response rather? But here's the funny thing. I was goofing around and I said, "Hey, make me a character for D&D based on the D&D 3.5 rules, and I want it to be an elf ranger," right? Which is a, you know, if you guys know anything about D&D, it's a you can pick all that kind of stuff. And I hit go, and it made this perfect, fantastic character sheet with a description, like where I was, all of this, where I was from, and it says so and so is a elf ranger from the forests of the Ouachita Mountains, and it kept on going with all these specifics, and then and it even gave my equipment list, right? Which is another thing that in Dungeons and Dragons you get a list of equipment. You got a sword and a bow and a hat or whatever. And of course, one of the things that it gave me, this little medieval fantasy J.R.R. Tolkien elf, a camera. that was part of my equipment to run through the forest in Lord of the Rings kind of world, right? Which I thought, and I've got that in here somewhere. It's if you notice down here on the far left, these are the things that I've searched for before, and not as many as some, but I've got quite a few there. But that was just a funny little anecdote about how it does and how it remembers who you are. So I got it to build this rubric, right? And I said, again, super basic sentence, generate a rubric about understanding the steps of the scientific method. So it does. It comes through and it gives me 8 criteria, total of 50 points. Feel free to tweak Feel free to tweak it based on your specific requirement. Good luck with the science experiment, and let me know if you need anything else. It's so kind, right? All right. So that's great. And that's a really good start, right? That gives you something, that gives you a little bit of a scaffold to use in your course. But here, I don't just want the text, I want something that I can actually use, right? So I'm going to do this next part is, and we're going to talk about this again in just a second in a broader sense. Once you've got this prompting down and you've learned how to specifically make these prompts the way that you want them to be to get what you need out, which again is an art. That is learning how to do that in all of these AI models takes time and learning and reading a whole lot of other examples online about it. And if you're going to do this, know that you're going to have to learn that little skill. The nice thing is, it's not like having to learn C++ coding language, right? It's not like having to learn a whole new language. This is a large language model for a reason. It's designed to be, to take input and give output in a human voice. So it makes it much easier. The learning curve on how to do these prompts is way lower than the way that we used to do it. I mean, think about in the past, we would have to do a whole lot of HTML to do what I'm about to do. So it gave me that. And I'm going to do, now we're going to do something called prompt chaining, where you put one prompt in and then you say something to the effect of, now see, I always like to be nice to it and thank it. So thanks for that. That's great. Can you put the, let's see, can you reformat those, or reformat the rubric, reformat that rubric in the form, sorry, terrible typist, in the form of a table. And I didn't put in, my job depends on it. Okay, I was afraid it was going to do this. It's putting it in as markup code, which is fine because you'll be able to put this into a markup engine, but that's not what I wanted. So I say, that's good, but can you make the table a text table with no markup code? It's not doing it. See, I did this like 5 times this morning before I came in here, and only 2 of the 5 times did it do this. So that's not getting me what I want. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back and I'm going to recopy the whole original prompt. I'm going to start a brand new prompt. And this is good too, because I want you to see how it will give you different answers, right? It will give you different responses. Hang on, Amar. Let me do one thing real quick. I see your hand raised. Let me get this while I'm rolling, and I will come back to your question. From this point, I'm going to say, please format the rubric as a text table with no markup, or without markup. Or I could say, please do not use markup. Either way. Let's see what we get. Nah, I did it again. I swear to you. In fact, I might have it over. No, I didn't.
It's probably because of your profile, because I've done that and it creates like the table that you want. And
it knows I'm a nerd.
I don't do what you do.
It knows I'm a nerd already. But let's just go with this one, right? Wow, it's really going at it. It's given me quite a few pieces of this rubric, right? So you notice that it has excellent, proficient, basic, limited. It gives you all of the rubric standards for each one of those. And on this column, just as a rubric should, it has the criteria. Ask a question, form a hypothesis, design an experiment, conduct the experiment, blah, blah, on and on and on. I didn't have to tell it what the scientific method was. I didn't have to tell it that I wanted it to do all of that criteria. It did that for me. It knew exactly what I wanted based on this gigantic set of data that it has. and it spit this out. I'm going to jump back over and see the previous one that we did and see how it goes. It did it in a different way. It gave us criteria and it gave us the points, right? It just did it as a straight, you either get this or you don't rubric. It didn't give us those criteria across. But again, this is a great example to notice the different ways you can do this multiple times to get multiple different answers, which is a little tedious. It's less tedious than coming up with it from scratch, in my opinion. But it's also something interesting that you can play with, right? And get yourself a second opinion, basically, or get yourself a second example. And if you think about it, this is exactly what we would do if we were trying to do something that we had never done before. And we go to the internet and we say, hey, how do you change the front wheel bearings on a 2014 Subaru Forester? And you get one YouTube video that this guy's doing it with a hammer. And you're like, oh, well, that's one way you could do it. And then, but you say, well, maybe I should look at this other video where this guy's actually in a garage and he's doing it with tools. Same kind of idea. Check your source or check your output and see what works for you. Amar, you've had your hand raised.
Well, I just wanted to, I exactly tried something like this sometime back because I wanted a visual image or a diagram, and I wasn't sure how I could do. And so in the ChatGPT, I just mentioned I need these headings, and the response was interesting. They said it said that I can't actually have a visual image for you, but I can tell you, you can link these words or in this fashion, and that should be helpful, which was helpful. And
Right.
Since it's a textual thing, I think that's the reason it couldn't and it can't. I think that's one of the reasons it really can't actually have an image.
So we're going to get into a fun part of that here in just a second. It's great that you mentioned that because we are actually going to play with that. We still got 23 minutes, so that's perfect. Laura?
Is there a way to create a prompt for ChatGPT where, all these beautiful rubrics that it's creating for you right now, what kind of format should we ask for so that perhaps we can copy all of that and upload it onto Blackboard? Is there a way to do that now, or should we wait for the Ultra version?
There's not that I know of. I don't think there's a specific way that you can directly copy and paste it yet. There might be workarounds for it, but I'm not aware of them because I don't think that you can go into, like, say, for example, HTML level of the rubric tool in Blackboard as it is now in Blackboard Learn. So my recommendation now would be to build it in this and then copy and paste each one into each cell. Again, more work, but easier than the other way, easier than coming up with it from scratch. And the other thing is when we do finally get Ultra, that will let you, that will do all that formatting for you. It will come up with the criteria or let you put criteria in, and then it will automatically format all of those. Catherine?
There's probably too many steps in the process, but my reading of Ultra is that it's got greater integration with Google Workspace, which is actually where I do all of my grading. So my thinking is that all this could essentially, it's Blackboard to Google Workspace, using Google Workspace, import this code in, simplifies the process, particularly if there's an easy connect between Blackboard and Google Workspace.
Right. And I feel like there is, our team, we are just scratching the surface, and it's been just in the past couple of months that we've really been digging into this, and we have not yet been able, I don't think any of us have yet been able to really dig into the AI tools that are in there. They exist, but I don't know if the support office, Jeff Nash is on the call. He might be able to give more insight in that. This is also new to us, this Ultra thing, that I am very eager to see how it does exactly that, Catherine, how it integrates the connectivity between different things like the Google suite and its internal AI and possibly external AIs. I'll be interested to see where all those come together and frankly where they don't. Where
Well,
you
and even thinking about your early examples that you tossed, where it's actually writing the code. I mean, that's a fairly simple coding thing, I think, in terms of writing a script and doing all that. So I don't know that this has to be done completely kind of by hand and from scratch in terms of the formatting. I think that there's probably ways to streamline this and to write some scripts that would facilitate this process. But again, it's the front end work, and that's what you seem to be saying, is that there's a learning curve with this.
exactly
And a lot of front end work. But once you invest that time, just like anything worthwhile, you know, once you learn a new skill, it's going to have its rewards.
Yep. I see that. Like I said, I started this back in March and just did a deep dive, and I am by no means a professional prompt engineer at this, but I've been doing it enough that I can get what is useful to me in almost all cases. Here's another tiny use case. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to jump to other stuff, but I have an Etsy shop where I sell art things and photos and stuff like that. One of the tedious things about Etsy is that it wants a lot of little filler text. It wants descriptions. It wants titles that fit a certain format of keywords. It wants all of these extra things. I've created ChatGPT things where I can just go in and say, here's a photo of fog over Forked Mountain in the Ouachita National Forest. And I say, in fact, I could give it the link of the photo. It can analyze an image and tell you what that image is. I'm not going to do that here because we'll run out of time. I'll end up playing with that all day. But then I have it where it will spit out a big giant block of descriptor text that I can just then take in and drop into Etsy, and it saves me hours and hours and hours, right? So yeah, that kind of speaks to that idea of learning how to do this prompt engineering so that you work smarter, not harder, and you simplify a lot of Here's the big thing. This is a really good point. I'm glad we got to this. This is simplifying a lot of things that are, in most cases, kind of drudge work. This simplifies the things that would otherwise take up a lot of time to do something that the payoff for it is not quite as much as the investment of time in the first place, right? There's that thin line between those. And there are tons of these that do that. Tons of ways to do that through these. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving on. Let's see. The last one here, I don't know why I will show you the full PowerPoint only to back out of it. The next thing we're going to talk about is prompt chaining. And we just did a little bit of that where I said, what's with that previous one a little bit and make it better, right? So, but real prompt chaining, I'm going to go back to one. Are you guys seeing? Yeah, you're seeing me. I'm going to go back to one that I built, that I made at this at the conference. And first, let me show you this document again. This document, this AI for course creation document that, again, I got from the conference. This is not my original stuff. This is someone, I forget what school they're from. I'm sorry. Anyway, this will take you through the process of prompt chaining. So the first thing you do is say, I want a course that blends, let's see. Here's the example of creating a comprehensive course outline. That's your first step, right? First thing I want to do is get an outline of what this course is supposed to be. And then you can come in and give it very specific things. Again, that course title right there. You can tell the target audience. Basically anything in all of these brackets. Here, the learning objectives. Here, the key topics. If you have a basic idea of what you want this course, what it needs to be, here's your course title again. The learning objectives are already stated. The key topics are stated above. The course content, I want detailed content covering learning objectives and key topics. Activity suggestions. It even will suggest to you activities to do in this course. You can also state in this that you want this to be aligned with QM, Quality Matters standards, and it will help you do that alignment, which is huge. That's a huge step that is honestly one of the most tedious and frankly brain-numbing parts of the course design, especially if you're trying to design it with QM in mind as your final output. Here's some other things. You can tell it the framework that you want. Do you want it to use the ADDIE model, which some of you have heard of? Analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. Do you want it to use Bloom's taxonomy, the successive approximation model, which I'm not even sure what that is? These two other models that I've heard of and have not studied either. So you go in and you put those specifics in, and then it spits you out a nice outline. And then you can go create this course material based on OER. And then under that, you can say, okay, now we've got in this, and this is in the same ChatGPT chat box, same session. The next thing you put in after it spits you out a nice course outline, you can say, okay, take that outline and now give me a lesson plan for this topic, or for each one of the topics that you mentioned above. And it will do that. And you can get very specific. Then you can do micro teaching lesson planning. Then you can do model integration. Then you can create learning objectives within that for all of the units that it's already told you that it breaks this thing out into units. You can ask it to integrate multimedia, suggest multimedia integrations. And you're doing this in the same chat thing, one after the other, so that it's building on the previous response that it gave you. And you can say, okay, that lesson number 3 sounds great. What are some multimedia tools and examples that I can use in that? Can I create them myself? Can I find them online? And you word this however you want to. Again, I'm just going to scroll through these. This is a long process-based list of chain prompting. It can write the course description, interactive activity design, learner engagement strategies, on and on and on, so that by the time you're done with this, ChatGPT has spit out every single piece of everything that needs to go into your course. Now, you're still going to have to do exactly what we've been talking about. You're going to have to check it. You're going to have to make sure at each step of the way that it's giving you the thing that you want. And if it's not, you say, redo that. Let's go back to that and change it to include this, or to delete this, or to be at a higher level or a lower level. And then you move on to the next one. You don't have to do all of these, but these are all examples of the ones that you can use to build your course out step by step and piece by piece. And once again, I want to reiterate this. This is a scaffold for your work. You're going to still need to go in and put the specifics of your field, the specifics for what the absolutes that you need them to learn in this specific class into this, because this is giving you just a general scaffold framework for putting these things in and think of these as suggestions, really, really good suggestions that save you a lot of time of having to fill all of those blocks of text in, right? But you're going to have to go back in and massage this to be the way you want it to be. Just like with those letters I was talking about earlier, you type off that letter that you want to look professional and it gives you something, and then you go back in and type a little bit, have to type a little bit more. Laura, you've got your hand raised. What's up?
Yeah, you mentioned that you got this at the conference. Do you have permission to share it with other people? And if so, could you share with us? Because often
absolutely
templates are what takes a lot of time building. And like I have my own running Google Doc of like these kinds of prompts. But yeah,
absolutely.
It's like,
There's one there.
For time.
I just dropped that into the chat for you. I highly recommend that you bookmark that. Let me see if I can find, I had another one that, yes, here's another one.
You will have to give us access. I just clicked on it and it says request.
Okay.
Yes.
I will go back to that and make sure that I can give you access. Here's another one from another conference. This is one that Tony Tabor in the support office of Blackboard gave me from the Blackboard conference that they went to a few months ago. This is another one that's open source, and let's see, try that one. Let me know if you can access that one. And I'll go back to the previous and change the share with others. I want, oh, it's on restricted. That's why. I'm going to do anyone with the link and just let everybody do that. If you try that link again, let me paste that link in case, just in case it changed. Try that link. Are you able to access that?
Yeah, they both work. Yes.
Awesome. Highly recommend that you bookmark those. just FYI. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, I wanted to show you a longer example, or not a full example, but a more complete example of that prompt chaining to make a course. I started with AI course objectives. I'm going to shut this little piece. Oh, you can't see that. Good. So I asked it to, the very first thing was, I told it, you are an expert course creator. Your task is to develop 5 comprehensive learning objectives. Oh, wait, no, that's the one from previously. I'm sorry. They don't name them very well. You can rename them over here on the left side. Okay. Yeah, this is an example of a really simplified version of that big long Word document. I said, you are an expert technology trainer for faculty at a college campus. Your faculty are from a wide variety of academic backgrounds. Your task is to develop a training plan for a 2-hour training workshop like this one that about the best practices for using generative AI in online courses. The course is aimed at college professors. First, please generate a catchy title, right? And it came up with this one, Unlocking the Power of Generative AI, Transforming Online Courses. And it says, hey, it's attention grabbing, and it hints at the transformative potential of AI in education. Let me know if you'd like more details. And I said, that's perfect. Next, write me a brief introduction to the generative AI and its capabilities. Use ChatGPT 3, or use yourself, basically, as the tool that will be featured. Absolutely, Brad. Here's a brief introduction. And it goes through. Introduction for this thing using ChatGPT. I said, next, please generate 5 examples that examples of the participants will learn. Maybe I need an assistant for this. Please generate 5 learning objectives is basically what I was saying. And it says, yeah, here you go. The takeaways that participants will learn by the end of this training, or they'll be able to effective integration of ChatGPT 3.5, tailored content creation, enhanced student engagement, instant feedback and support, ethical considerations. It got all of that stuff. That's pretty much what I was going to say anyway, right? Then I said, what did I say? Write who are the participants and what are their prior knowledge and skills. And it goes through and it says prior knowledge and skills for the participants are college professors. Their prior knowledge and skills should be subject expertise, pedagogical skills, online teaching experience, basic technology. And you notice here it's giving descriptions of all of those, which is nice, good fluff filler text. I asked it to write what materials and resources are needing for the training. It says a training room, computers or devices, training modules, access to ChatGPT, on and on and on. And then I said, generate 3 ideas for hands-on activities. Bam. AI-enhanced assignment creation, AI-driven student support chatbot design, ethical scenario discussion, right? It's telling on itself here even, right? Then I said, create a method to measure the effectiveness. So now we're bringing that full QM alignment circle all together. I've asked it to set out some objectives, to give me some activities, and to align them in a way that's measurable, right? So 1, 2, 3, and then we'll do that loop again, right? create a method to measure the effectiveness of the training. And it says pre-workshop and post-workshop surveys, knowledge assessments, practical application evaluation, participant feedback, peer review and collaboration, follow-up surveys, and it gives me 10 of those, right? I stopped there because I could keep going and going and going. I see some chat in there, folks saying that they have to leave. Before you leave, if you haven't gone yet, thank you so much for joining us for this. Email me with any questions that you have. We've still got, we are at the end of our time. I don't have time to show you. I know. I mean, I'll stay here and talk about this for the rest of the afternoon if you want to. In fact, feel free to come and go as long as you know, whenever you want. I'm going to sit here and play, and I'll keep talking if you're still there. Enjoy and give me, you know, you don't have to raise your hand, just pipe up and talk and I'll hear you. But I do want to show you all of the graphics that I used in this presentation, all done in MidJourney. Jumping to MidJourney now, MidJourney is run through a program called Discord. Discord was originally designed mostly for gamers as a way to communicate live while they were playing games, and to make small rooms, discussion rooms and chat rooms where they could talk back and forth about the games they were playing. And then that broadened out to be about, you can make a chat room for everything. If you have an organization, you can join, you can build one of these and invite all of your friends and break it out into specific rooms. But one of the things that you can do is access MidJourney through it. This is my MidJourney account, and these are the things that what you see on the screen right now. It's not scrolling, is it? Come on, slow computers. These are some of the prompts that I was playing around with. In fact, Laura and I did a video at the beginning of the month. And in the video, man, I hate that it's not catching up with it here.
Please tell me you did not modify my face.
Nope, I did not AI you. Wow, I really wish this would share this.
Probably have too many things opened.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick, and then I'm going to share my screen again and share that and go to this. Come on, catch up with me, little guy. You can do it. Let's see. You can't really see that behind me very well. Dang, I really wish it would catch up. Let me try one more thing. Stop sharing, share screen, and just share Discord. Maybe it'll do that. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Maybe it, oh, there it is. So let's see if is it moving? It's slowly moving.
Slowly moving.
Yeah. So these are some of the art assets, the digital assets that I used to put into this. And you notice I did a whole bunch of them that look a lot similar, right? A robot, a cinematic photo of a robot eating books while writing a new book, futuristic. And what I got was, is that going to pop up? It gives you 4 examples. You can specify things like how tall and wide you want it to be. You can specify a level of chaos. So it will mix it up and make it weirder and weirder, or more and more different from each other. And then you can pick one of these and tell it, I want that one, but then I want you to redo that one again to give me 4 new ones based on that one. And then you pick whichever one you want and keep going. Laura, you haven't seen this yet. These are logo designs. It doesn't all have to be pretty pictures and photos and cinematic robots, right? You can tell it, imagine a simple minimalist logo featuring a cube, flat vector. That's the output that I want it to be. And it gives me 4 of those, right? I didn't like those, so I said, do it again. Based on, I think I said, base this one on a hexagon, or maybe dice. I'm not sure what that was. A 6-sided die, yeah. I needed a background to go behind Laura in a recording that we did at the beginning of the month. And so I came in and asked it over and over and over again. And by the way, forgive me because these get weird. Sometimes they get very weird. I wanted some kind of background to go in the back behind Laura, to be sort of just like kind of a Zoom background, right? Behind a green screen. That was one. That's not the one that I used. I think I ended up using, yeah, I used this one. Just a simple, nice thing to be in your background. You can use this for a background in a PowerPoint. You can use it in the background of your Zoom session. There were other ones, just as an example. I almost used this one, a little more colorful. I thought maybe that took away too much because it was just a little too busy, right? But you can do these over and over and over again and get tons of results. So I'm going to do, this is the last thing we're going to play with. I'm going to go to the bottom. Now, MidJourney, you have to, there's a little bit of, I'm not even going to call it code that you have to learn. There's a format that you have to enter these in, right? And the format to create one of these is /imagine. And then you fill out your prompt. I don't know if you can see down there in the very bottom, near the bottom left. All right, so somebody in the session, give me an adjective.
Disgusting.
Oh boy, disgusting. Did I spell that right? Maybe. It'll figure it out. Someone give me a noun. Frog.
Yeah.
Okay. Marlene says frog. We're going to put frog in. Give me a verb.
Jumps,
What?
jumps,
Jumps. Okay, yeah, because frogs jump, of course. I'm going to put jumping. What are they? Give me another noun of it can be any noun. It doesn't have to be something specific that a frog would jump on, unless you just want to see that. What? Somebody look to your left and name the closest object to you.
Window.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great. Jumping out of a window. And I'm just going to hit go. I hit go. It's thinking. It says waiting to start. Now, this is accessing a very busy database. So there are a lot of people currently using this as we speak, and it's got to think about it. Okay, there it goes. It's giving me the blurry template. It's getting it better. 15%. 31%, 46%. You see it's getting a little clearer. 62, 78, 93. We're almost there. 100%. That's what we got.
I wouldn't
There's our
call those
disgusting-
disgusting.
Well, I mean,
Well, the last one, the bottom
he's-
right, maybe.
yeah, he looks like he's been under my couch.
Yes.
And then, so say, for example, we love that one. We love that fourth one. I'm going to come down here and you can upscale that fourth one. It goes in a zigzag, a Z shape. So the top left is 1, top right is 2, bottom left is 3, and bottom right is 4. So I'm going to do upscale number 4. I could also do variations of any one of those 4, which is that second line that's V, 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so I upscaled. Did I? There we go. It's going to upscale. Upscale usually happens faster. Yeah, happens much faster. And there he is. He's wearing like a raggedy flannel shirt or something. And yeah, he's going out that window, man. This is just fun. It's just.
Can I share something that is gonna make your day, Brad? Yesterday in class, I had my literature class people, right? We were reading a novel that is basically post-apocalypse, you know, people with XY chromosomes turn into these monsters. So I asked my students just to get them to think about the power of our imagination, like how horrible the image that they created in their heads could look like compared to what AI could generate for us based on the descriptions that we get in the novel. And so I asked them to use different programs. MidJourney now, I think you have to pay for it, which
I think
we
so
could,
too. You used to get a basic amount for free.
yeah, and now it's like it's all gone. So, but there are plenty of other free options that I gave them to play with. So each pair of students had a different software. I'm gonna share in the chat what they came up with. Only
you know-
only the last one really looked a little bit like what this could be like, but yeah, it was a very interesting experience.
Have you pasted it? Is it in there?
I guess I had to send it. It's sending it. It's just like
Okay,
screenshot.
there we go.
There are better ones. Let me show you that.
Wow. Yeah. It goes crazy. It goes really crazy. On that note, I want to show as a quick use case for your courses, right? I want to imagine, and the prompt is a web banner header for an online college course for English literature. And then I want to tell it, because banners have to be a certain size, so I have to specify the aspect ratio, and there's a little code to do that. It's dash
Oh.
dash AR, and let's do 1200 by 300 to get a nice big wide one. And I could probably factor that down, 12 by 3. Let's do that. 12 by 3. I'm going to hit, you know what? I'm also going to put some chaos in there, chaos level 50, so that we get some different different looks there. Now I could go in and specify a whole lot more. I could say base this on a maroon and silver theme. I could say make it be photographic or cinematic or all of these sort of terms of art. I could even say make it in the style of Leonardo da Vinci or Geoffrey Chaucer, because it's an English class, or a visual style and a visual feel, right? So
Make
it's
it look
coming
like
up
The
with these.
Simpsons.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get as specific as you want. It's almost done. I use these a lot for whenever I make a Google survey, and it needs a bar up at the top, and I don't like using the generic ones. I'll just put something in here and say, hey, make me one of these. So here's 4 little things that it did that's, vaguely, I don't think those are very English literature, but you can massage these down to be more and more specific. I think the reason that it gave me such different responses was because I put that chaos in there. So I can redo it and take the chaos part off. Let's try that. We'll give it a second. But we're gonna wind down here. I will, I've made a couple of those resources available to you. We've got, we have a list of who you all are, I believe. And I will send out, when I get the email, I'll send out a mass email to some of these. I'm also thinking about and starting to work on a Blackboard org. That just I want to be a repository for this kind of thing, like all of this kind of information. So here's a better one, right? I took the chaos pieces off.
I love those.
Those are great, aren't they? It's a good bit of variety. Here in the bottom, you got world literature. You've got more sort of this red fancier one here. This one with the computer in the middle, and it looks like it's even an Apple computer. It is. It's totally an Apple computer. A little older, more historic one for sort of classical lit. And that took us, I mean, I did it while I was chatting with you guys, right? The hardest part for me was spelling all my words right?
Hey, Brad,
yeah.
in terms of resources, one of the things I'm on is a few like Google groups or listservs related to this in education.
Mhm.
But obviously it's not UALR specific. So I'm wondering if just something as simple, you're talking about Blackboard org. Well, that requires me to go into Blackboard, which is not my favorite thing to do and is clunky, as we know. So I'm just wondering if we could get like a Google group created for, you know, UALR, AI at UALR or something, so that we can kind of post these questions. Things
That's a
get
great idea.
lost in fact focus. You know, classifieds isn't the appropriate venue.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Yeah,
and particularly
that's a great idea. I'll look into that. And I'll maybe that is a better place than another reason for that. A good point that I really hadn't thought of yet. Just in the same way that these other schools have made those 2 documents that I've shared with you openly available, there's a certain attitude and understanding both in Quality Matters. Quality Matters is really, really big on sharing what you know. But also, there's a big idea of this keeping these things open source, not putting these kind of things behind, although it is hypocritical because a lot of them they're not showing us their algorithms for this, right? But the idea being sort of that share and share alike model and that Creative Commons model to build this stuff and to share this stuff more importantly. So yes, I think I might do that, or make a Google Classroom thing. I kind of want to keep it in a thing where it's not just a bunch of resources thrown in. I want to make it where it's sort of staged in that has good pieces of that we can learn from, that we can access for as much for learning as for resource collection.
Well, I think the reality is
Google's
that
right.
this is not necessarily fact focus material. I think that it needs
Absolutely.
something more specific. Also, you know, you could argue that fact focus may have run its course. It's not really being used in a discussion type way. It's used for kind of informational FYI. It seems like there's a certain amount of fear of doing anything controversial on there, which is a whole nother conversation. But just something even, hey, this is what I'm looking to do, or, you know, this is how, like, I've seen listservs used for this, like, you know, like, here's the code, and I can't get the, you know, it, like, my code is screwed up. You know, just,
Okay.
what am I doing wrong?
Well, let me keep thinking on that, because
Yeah.
I think that is a good insight and a useful direction that I'm going to consider taking this in instead of the Blackboard org. Yeah, let me kind of kick the tires on some things and find out if maybe
Yeah, just something that could facilitate conversation and it also decreases, frankly, the reliance on e-learning.
Yeah.
Folks. You know, kind of that user input kind of thing, because I'm, as soon as we get off here, I'm going to play around with this and look up some, you know, I've been playing around with it before, but now I have a greater understanding, play around for some of my you know, you made it through the year image searches.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have an Adobe account, I recommend Firefly. The reason, and this is honestly the only reason that I somewhat shamefully allow my ethical concerns with MidJourney, because I do have the dilemma, but I still use it. And the reason that I use it is because, in my opinion, it is the best. It has the best outputs. Everything else is just not quite as good as this yet, including Adobe Firefly. It will be soon, and it's getting literally better every single day. And we didn't even cover some of the other ethical concerns about race and gender and cultural bias in this. If you go through and look at the examples of what everybody has put in MidJourney, for example, and really in all of them, but MidJourney is the one that I'm familiar with, you'll notice that all of the women are impossibly gorgeous white women, almost, unless you specifically say, and that all of the men are super strong jock or warrior type white dudes. And all of the, if it tends even towards prompts that or outputs that, even though you don't specify male or female or color or anything like that, seems to have sort of a certain amount of machismo, a certain amount of dudeness, and it's and when it does gender, if you ask it to do a couple, two lovers, it's going to almost always do male and a female, white, very traditional, heteronormative. And there's two reasons for that. And this in itself is phenomenally interesting to me. One is it was trained on materials of what exists out there on the internet, which tells us a lot about the prevalence of white cisgendered male presence on the internet, in a bigger, much wider, on the internet and in all of our media, right? Whether it's books, movies, all of this, because these models have been trained on that. And the other thing, the other input for this, so that's what it was originally trained on, but it's also still learning. So when we put input into the machine, the more we ask it for questions, the more we ask it questions about white cisgendered warriors and white cisgendered super beautiful women models, the more it's going to think that's what that's what the humans want to hear, and it's going to keep giving us that.
Hey, Brad.
Yep.
I hate to interrupt, but the Zoom that we're using is my meeting room, and I've got another meeting to hop onto.
Okay. Then I guess
This is what happens when IT won't make us an e-learning account, but
all right. Well,
I apologize for the interruption. I do want all of you who are hanging out with Brad to know he loves talking about the stuff, so reach out to him. And I think we're also going to put some things on the calendar for the spring where you guys can go and try out some of these platforms with Brad in the room.
like an open office
so that'll be a lot of
time.
fun.
Thank you guys. So
Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
Brad.
Thank
Super good. Thank you.
Great comments, guys. Thank y'all.
Thanks.